I haven't played that for years.
Now that I got the groove, I can imagine like what could be a melody on top, right? So. It's a paradise.
I try to find a general rhythm in a scene. Mad Max, I spent at least 7 months producing the score. Trying this, trying that. Different types of drums. The drums that were uniquely recorded for Mad Max, just playing one. If you combine all these multiple tracks together, then you can get a really, really interesting quality of these drums playing together, and pretty aggressive, which I'm a big fan of. Same time. These are things that you constantly struggle with when you work the picture. I don't care what music it is, but if I make a track, it has to give me goosebumps myself. I don't say that to be arrogant, but if it doesn't hit me in the stomach as being a great piece of music, I cannot expect the audience, anybody out there, to have a feeling that it hits the stomach.
If it gives me goosebumps, it's pretty likely it'll give someone else goosebumps, because I think goosebumps come for everyone from similar places.
When we're looking at emotion and other kinds of responses to music, there are many structures in the brain that are involved. Music is so multifaceted, it's so multidimensional. Different aspects of music are processed by different systems in the brain. So when you're looking at something like melody and pitch, that's processed by one system in the brain. When you're looking at the time-based aspects like tempo and rhythm, that's processed by another system. We are having some sort of a physiological response that the body is showing, and the goosebumps is actually just a sign of what's happening inside your body. There's a system in the brain, ventral striatum and nucleus accumbens in particular. It's our reward center. Things like chocolate or sex, these are reactions that we can see involve these structures. So it's interesting because the same kinds of pleasurable feelings we get from chocolate, dopamine release, we could see some of the same kinds of activations in the brain to music.
It's the one art form that technically doesn't exist. You know, you can touch musical instruments, you can touch CDs or cassettes or vinyl that contain the music, but you can never actually put your finger on music. It's just air moving a little bit differently. All music is doing is providing some structure to these air molecules. So if a truck goes by, it's pushing air molecules against our inner ear. If someone's playing cello, it's pushing the exact same air molecules against our ear, just in a different structured way. And there's something odd, but really, really interesting and powerful about that.
But they'll never take our freedom!
Makes armies march into battle. Makes people cry.
It can really increase the overall emotion in a way that will make a movie stay with its audience long after the last frame of film. We are doing something here. We're harnessing something from the ether.
Film music and Orchestral music in general is of great interest to neuroscientists and to scientists because of its great power to emote. Film music is usually something that we're not paying conscious attention to, and yet it has such a powerful impact on us.
On Remember the Titans, the music for me was written so specifically for that.
What's very interesting about using music in film, it's providing a very specific context for the music.
There's a permanent linkage, so when you hear it again, the experiences you had in the theater are evoked.
I never even thought about whether it could be used elsewhere.
Thank you. God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
The phone rang. A friend of mine said, I'm at the convention. Remember the Titans is playing as loud as a Kiss concert. I wasn't asked, which I'm not happy about, but it's quite interesting watching it being used for something completely different.
We live in a world that things are underscored. It's actually interesting how the music of Remember the Titans evokes what Obama wanted to be as the man walking out as the new president.
Whatever the audience felt in the theater, it was resonant again.
The power of the score in and of itself is amazing.
When we're watching a 90-minute standard film, we make about 21,000 or more eye movements. And even though we feel like we have full control and freedom of where to look, many studies on eye tracking have shown that actually a film audience is usually looking at about the same place on the screen at about the same time. One way that the eye can be directed to a specific spot on the screen is when there's something about the music that matches some characteristic on the screen. For example, a rising pitch with something that is rising. And a great example of this comes from the married life montage from the film Up. The first time that we see the balloons that are tied to Carl's cart, that's really important because the balloons are going to be an important visual motif, an important theme for the entire film. We see Carl, and then we see Ellie walking out with a parrot, and then the balloon cart rises up and comes back down. So it's very interesting to see that music can be part of the choreography of the dance of our eye movements during a film sequence.
The point for that movie.
It'll always be one of the all-time great science fiction scores. Chinatown was written in 10 days after an earlier score had been written, recorded, and thrown out. And it's very interesting that, you know, Jerry comes in and he looks at the film and he immediately decides he needs 4 harps, 4 pianos, strings, percussion, and a solo trumpet.
Why 4 pianos? I mean, Jerry was just sort of the godfather of all of this, wasn't he? It's such an interesting musical choice, but that's Jerry.
You ask musicians, they might think he's the best ever.
When I heard the Reavers, I said, my God, this guy must be 80 years old. I really thought, I thought maybe here's some guy who's 80 years old who maybe wrote his greatest scores of his life. And I wanted to find out who this guy was, and I met this young man named John Williams. I was amazed.
John Williams did not start as a classical composer. He started as a jazz pianist.
John Williams played piano on West Side Story. And he played piano on The Apartment. Born and bred in the Fox system. Him and Jerry Goldsmith, that's where they learned.
Nobody knew that the whole field would change.
When we saw Jaws, if it didn't have that ba-dum, ba-dum, none of us would have known what was happening.
Dun dun. Dun 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 dun.
It was pretty brilliant. And it was almost like a crazy experiment. He was an engine. Ba-dum, ba-dum, accelerate, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. Like a train moving forward. This is an eating machine. He is as simple as I move forward to kill. That shark didn't need more. He needed 2 notes.
The first day with Steven said, "What are you going to play for Jaws?" I went. He said, "You're kidding."
I said, "You're crazy. This is a serious movie." I thought he was going to say, "Oh, no, I'm only kidding." And he was about to play this very poetic pastoral symphony. And John said, "No, no, no. You made a very primal movie."
Part of the genius of John Williams is how he spots music and how he places music in a movie. John did not want music to celebrate a red herring. He only wanted music to signal the actual arrival of the shark.
Everybody goes, "Oh, Jaws, it's just these 2 notes." It's not. There's this amazing orchestral symphonic piece that takes place and is just being triggered by these 2 notes.
Just artistic imagination is phenomenal. We are not worthy.
I said, "Oh my God, you know, it's a rebirth. Film music is back. It's alive."
Star Wars made such an incredible splash when it came out.
Everything about it was so exciting and thrilling for an 11-year-old growing up at that time.
Here they come.
And spoke to a whole generation of people.
I was, I think, 12 when that thing came out, so it had a massive impact on my youth.
We had the theme for Star Wars like locked in our head as a kid. As soon as we walked out of that theater.
Musically, yes, it is a symphonic score, but I mean, it's one of the best scores I've probably ever written.
It's impossible to think of Star Wars without Williams' music. The score he did helped the audience rediscover the classical orchestral film score. Spielberg and Lucas can lay claim to many things, and one of them is helping to reintroduce audiences to that kind of movie-going experience.
Star Wars turned the shit upside down.
It was John Williams that made me, first of all, realize that film music can be of a quality and distinction that is as great as any of the classical composers I grew up with.
There's the traditional idea of good and bad and how they were exemplified in music. Vader theme. Dun, 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 dun. It's so martial and so broad that you go, oh boy, there's something.
Right score for the right movie at the right time.
That 70s era, that is absolutely the era of John Williams.
Without his music, Superman's powers are greatly diminished. Believe me, if you try to fly without that theme, you go nowhere. 1 step, 2 steps, and down.
Everyone knows the Superman theme, but the Krypton theme that comes right before it, that overture, it's mysterious, it's almost like avant-garde. That sets up this really tuneful double chorus melody, almost makes it, to me, 10 times more the piece. So it's his way of surrounding pieces with other pieces.
Most of the world, if you were to play the music from Jaws or Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark, most folks would know exactly what that was.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. If you hear the melody without the rhythm, you can recognize it. Ba da 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 da. But if you just do the rhythm ta 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 with no melody, you recognize it either way.
A very simple little sequence of notes, but I spend more time on those little bits of musical grammar to get them just right so that they seem inevitable.
There's a hooky, tuneful, well-orchestrated theme, but I think that's only half of it.
There's always the bravura part of the John Williams composition, you know, the first 8, 16, 32 bars, you know, the great Raiders of the Lost Ark theme. And then comes the B part. It's less well known, but it's so beautifully crafted. And I always think,
if it would be convenient to go into the call.
Yeah. I like that. It seems like a very natural transition.
Up or down? Maybe once down. It could go down once and then go up.
What a score needs to do has changed because of how filmmaking has changed. Let's take John Williams, let's take the end of E.T. It is just a wide open space for music. When was the last time that somebody left a space that open and said, I want this to be a music moment where you just bring that tune home?
We have this vast, expansive music with the taking off of the spaceship. John Williams, Steven Spielberg decide that we're going to go from big music to reminding us who's going into that spaceship. We could look at what is happening in the story as being very sad. These are farewells. And at the very end, we hear this coda, this fanfare that's very triumphant. That is saying that we're looking at this from Eliot's viewpoint, that it's not a loss.